Okay, so this last session, we've got maybe 20 minutes or so to discuss. What we wanted to focus on is the off-field side of player and agent relationships. So, in my experience, and certainly with Erkut as well, maybe over the last 5 to 7 years, maybe a little bit more, there's been a growing proliferation really in off-field related commercial, merchandise, brand, ambassador opportunity. And that in part started really because, ultimately, traditionally, talent in lots of different ways has always been on-field talent. People, players, athletes are paid for their on-field ability to be able to do specific, very inelastic things like play football because of their skill set. What happens as a result, obviously, is that then, as individuals get better, their off-field profile, or rather their on-field profile, translates into off-field profiles. And with the proliferation of social media, the ability effectively to become influencers in particular markets and platforms, if it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, I'm definitely missing a couple of Facebook, etc. And as you can see from some of the numbers there, what has effectively happened is, players now are effectively brands and influencers in their own right. And they're in their own right now because their on-field talent resonates and links into their off-field talent capabilities. And one of the things that I think would be interesting, Erkut, for you to talk about briefly as much as you want to, is the investment quite a few years ago that you made, or you decided with some of your players, from their on-field presence to their brand affiliation, to their brand divergencies, so that effectively you are future-proofing your talents, off-field capabilities for the times when their on-field excursions effectively end.
Yeah, I mean, what I believe personally is that in the next few years, players will get more and more important, probably more important than clubs. That's where it goes now. So it started in America with these athletes becoming businessmen, they're becoming more in society. So now it's coming over to Europe, and the income of the player, and another part, the social media. Now in the past, there was no social media. I mean, when we started creating social media, working with an agency in Germany, it was like, for me, it was like, we need to invest in the next 5-6 years in terms to create a big following, and then we can put that following into generating income. Yeah, so a lot of colleagues, a lot of mine, they said, why do you pay an agency money to get professional social media? What do you want to do with that? And I said, I want to earn money with that, because it's the voice of the player. And in every club the player goes, he will get more fans on it. Different countries, different clubs, and you follow it, and it's a voice. In the past, players didn't have that voice. Today, they have their own voice through social media. I mean, Nassim, Lukas is also one of the biggest in Germany, most followed players, also started very early. And he has probably, with Mesut, the two biggest, I think, right, in Germany. I think Toni Kroos is big. But, I mean, you have to start early to build up. And if you have a young player, he's playing today maybe at Crystal Palace in the US, he will play in 5-6 other clubs. So you need to take his followers from club to club and build it up. So it's a voice. Why? If I go and do a Boots deal, then I can negotiate and say, you know what, actually, you have to pay my player 1 million a year, but if you want to use my player's social media, you pay another $500,000 on top. Because one post on the social media of my client is worth $80,000. If you want to do it 10 times a year, I give you a deal, $500,000. What do you say? It's value. Same, you do an endorsement deal. I mean, Misha is an expert in that. He will, in a bit, explain it more in detail. It opens you more doors, more points to negotiate. Again, off the pitch is so important, and it's becoming more important every day.
And two things just to mention, and we can maybe move on to the next slide as well in a second. But the two things that I see in the market whenever I'm working with elite players and when I'm speaking to particular brands now, I obviously have Cristiano as the example. I have not seen a brand endorsement deal in the last 4 years which doesn't include significant social media activity, which effectively means, in my mind, that a lot of brands are specifically looking at the individuals who have big social media presence. But beyond social media presence is the point. It's actually authentic interaction and measurable outcomes. That's what a lot of people are actually looking at. So if you look at Mesut's feed, for example, the amount of interactions and likes and otherwise as a proportion of his total followers is high compared to a lot of different footballers generally. So that's the first thing, which is brands see it as an absolute prerequisite. The second thing to bear in mind...
I mean, just a quick one. Why did people buy the Cristiano Ronaldo jersey when he went to Juventus? Because they follow Juventus? No chance. They're not Juventus fans. They're Ronaldo fans who bought the new jersey from all over the world. The club knows that. It's the player, it's the player's brand. Players growing bigger, and that's what we have to look at.
Yeah, and I think Cristiano is an interesting example of obviously monetizing extremely well his brand. But a lot of players that I see as well, from across the board, but a lot of elite players, a lot of the best commercial teams that work with the players are doing quite specific things. They're almost, I think, working backwards. They're not saying in the short term being reactive of, oh, we get a brand ambassador deal from someone because they've approached us. It will actually be the inverse of that. They will have a proactive, strategic, long-term plan, effectively to speak to each player and the big talented guys that they particularly work with and say, just like Matthew was talking about earlier, which was very important, which was, what are you interested in? What is your personal brand supposed to be about? What is it you're passionate about? What is it you want to speak up about? What is it the type of interest that you're actually going to invest in because they're a part of you? Because in the end, people very quickly can see beyond the artificial. And what has to happen usually for most authentic footballers that are trying to put out decent content is that it has to resonate. And usually the only way it resonates, and I'm sorry, Misha, it's only from some of the stuff that you were talking to us about is the truth. It has to resonate, and it will only resonate properly if it's authentic because you know that they're speaking passionately about what they're doing. And it might well be that a player, there's plenty of players that we work with as well, that have no interest whatsoever in anything social media related because all they want to do is concentrate on field. Maybe they have a boot deal and nothing else, but all they want to do is concentrate on their on-field activity, and that's it. Absolutely fine. There's plenty that are the exact opposite of that for lots of different reasons, which are, I would like an off-field brand, an off-field presence, and I want to go and curate it in these particular ways, using these particular platforms in these particular ways. And so, yeah, I think what I want to just briefly touch on, and then obviously Erkut can do, should we do image rights first, yeah? Sorry, go on. Yeah.
About image rights?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I just do briefly. Like, I mean, you hear more and more, then you know more the details about that. Image rights in contracts, or is a separate contract. You sign a deal with a club, and big players, usually, not all the players in a club, especially here in England, they have another contract, an image right contract. So some part of the money is paid to this image right. So that means the player usually have another company somewhere here in UK or in Germany or somewhere else. Some have it very far away. So, and some money the club can pay, I think, up to 20% to that account. So it's the image right. That means the club is using your image and pays you money for that. That has tax efficiency and everything. I'm not going into that. But in certain clubs in the UK, so you can't, or let's say, if I do a personal endorsement deal as a football player, some clubs in the UK says, hey, we want a part of that. For example, Chelsea, right? If you go to Chelsea today as a player today, you should know that the club will take 50% of every personal endorsement deal you have. Let's say you sign with Chelsea, 3 days later a car company is coming from, I don't know, from Asia, and it pays you 5 million a year for endorsement. Chelsea's taking 2.5 of that. At Arsenal, for example, they're not taking anything. 100% goes to the player. If you go to Manchester City, they take up to 75%. That means Manchester City players are not really likely to do any personal endorsement deals. They say, I'm not doing anything because I have to pay everything nearly to the club. I work for them, not for me. The club says on the other side, hey, you use our brand. That's why the brand comes to you. Same at Real Madrid. You pay 50% in general. There's some other players who might say, I'm Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm not getting 50. I get more than 50. But that's the exception. But that's where it goes. And You can't do every deal with your client, because if you have an image right contract and the club has certain agreements with partners, for example, Arsenal have Emirates. That means for my clients at Arsenal, I can't sign another flight company. If, for example, I don't know, Qatar Airways is not possible, Turkish Airlines is not possible, Lufthansa, I can't do it. So it's limited to what you can do. So it's not always easy when you have an image right contract to do a lot of endorsement deals.